Because of his importance in William Marshall's life, I think we have to have a little video about the Duke of Gordon. Excuse me, Alexander IV, Duke of Gordon. He was born in 1743, and he became Duke at the tender age of 9 when his father Cosmo died. So that the 9-year-old became Duke of Gordon, Marquess of Huntly, Earl of Huntly and Enzie, Viscount of Inverness, Lord Strathaven, Balmorach and Doon, Garthy and Kincardine, and a little bit later, Earl of Huntly in the county of Gloucester, and Earl of Norwich in the county of Norfolk. So quite an important 9-year-old. He attended Eton College, as the best people always do, of course, and he wouldn't see perhaps very much of William Marshall, though Marshall was a houseboy in the castle. You would only see him when he was there. Their friendship, which was a friendship up to a point, because of the huge social distance between them, started as they grew older. Anyway, the Duke, when he became an adult, he did quite a number of interesting and important things. He was a clever man, and he was a product of the Enlightenment, of course, which was happening at that time. He had the village of Fochabers replanned and set out in a rational way, and you see the signs of that today, with its town square and its church and all the buildings, by a man called Baxter of Edinburgh. The streets, some of the streets are named after the Duke's daughters: Charlotte Street, Madeline Street, Susan Street, Louisa Street and Georgiana Street. He did the same for Tomintoul and Port Gordon. The Gordon setter, a very handsome, russet-coloured animal, beautiful to look at, not one of the most intelligent of dogs, but a nice-ish dog all the same, was the result of the breeding that he did. He was interested in hunting and shooting and fishing, as indeed they all were. He was interested also in science, practical science mostly, astronomy, mechanics. He was interested in agriculture and improving his land, and really I think he was quite a good duke as far as his tenants were concerned. For one thing, at a time when the Highland clearances were very much happening, and we all know about them, there was no clearing on the Duke of Gordon's lands. He saw no need for it, he didn't really approve of it, and the tenants stayed safe on their properties as long as they paid the rent and managed wherever they stayed well. The Duke was also very interested in music, and he was interested in Scots traditional music, and he wrote tunes. And in the first book that William Marshall had published at the Duke's expense, there is a tune called Brodie House, a reel, and in little letters beside the title it says, by the D of G. So this is by the Duke of Gordon. I'm going to have to put the violin down to change pages in my music book, so that will happen from time to time. The Duke stayed, of course, at Castle Gordon on the west side of Fochabers, still there today, a very fine place. But he made it finer because it was a little bit ramshackle when he was a child, and he had restoration work done, and he had it extended to the splendour that it now demonstrates today. And so here is a strathspey by William Marshall, which is called Gordon Castle, celebrating the splendour of the Duke's house. castle. The Duke and his wife, of whom there will be much more in the next video, had 7 children. And the youngest of them was a young man called Lord Alexander Gordon. Now, 2 of the children were a little bit disappointing, and perhaps Lord Alexander was the most disappointing of the lot. He didn't prosper as an adult. He didn't live long as an adult. He was dissolute, gambling, womanizing, drinking, all these bad things. He was found dead, sadly, in the barracks at Musselburgh. He had joined the army, but he was only 24. Here is William Marshal Strathspey, Lord Alexander Gordon. In the castle, of course, there would be fine occasions with many important people there from time to time. Robert Burns visited them on one occasion. But mostly it would be people of their own sort, people from the upper crust, the upper ranks of society. And some of these occasions would be celebrated because, for example, there would be the Duke's birthday. Annually, there would be a big party. Here is William Marshal Strathspey, the Duke of Gordon's birthday. Duke of Gordon's birthday. Now, as he himself had been, his son George became the Marquis of Huntly by virtue of being his older son, and he was the Marquis from day one onwards. When he was 17, the young Marquis left Scotland temporarily, and he went to the continent. He went with a professor from Aberdeen, Professor Copeland, who was a friend of the family, and with his tutor. And this was, of course, an educational, cultural, grand tour of Europe. Mostly they went to France and Italy. When he left, William Marshal wrote a very fine Strathspey, well-known one, which is called The Marquis of Huntly's Farewell, and this is it. A fine tune to set you on your way. The Marquis came back. The Marquis lived at the castle. All went well until his father died in 1827, and he in his turn became Duke of Gordon, the fifth Duke of Gordon. For only 9 years. He died 9 years later in 1836. But sometime before that, Marshall wrote another very good strathspey, and this is a very Highland one, it always seems to me. It sounds quite warlike. Boys like us. The Marquis of Huntly Strathspey. Here we go. In the next video, we'll hear about the Duchess, and she was an interesting person.